Now, sometimes I hear Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu leaders say something like, God is on our side. I remember college football, before a game we get down on our knee and say a prayer. Now you're asking for good sportsmanship, but you're really saying, could we just win one more game, win the national championship? But you know what? If God is on anybody's side, God is on the side of the widows and the orphans, 120 million children in the world who can't go to school, and all those wounded veterans. And I don't think that any of us here have the right to say, until every single child on this planet can go to school, every wounded veteran in distress is helped, every widow is given shelter and care, and every orphan has love. I don't think that any of us here have the right to say God is on our side, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. My father, Haji Ali, General Petraeus, they all taught me it's important to listen. So I asked women in rural Afghanistan or Pakistan, what do you want? I want to serve you, but how can I really help you? And you'd think most women would say, I want a good husband, I want a big house, or I want prosperity. But you know what most women tell me? There's simply two little things. They say, we don't want our babies to die, and we want our children to go to school. And I think all of you who are women here and mothers, you can relate to that. Women, you bring life into the world, you nurture life, and you are the really advocates for education. And basically that's the reason I do this. Not any other reason. I'm just simply trying to help the request of the women in the rural villages. They don't want their babies to die, and they want their children to go to school. Well, in 2001, Haji Ali's wife, Sakina, died. And it was very sad. Haji Ali met me, and then we walked to her grave. And she was buried in a very simple grave. He said, in a very rare moment of sentiment, without her, I am nothing. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, soon you'll be standing here, and I'm going to be in the ground. And he kind of chuckled, and I didn't think it was very funny, because, I lost my father and my sister. And everyone here, you've lost somebody dear to you, and you never get over the loss of a loved one or family or friend. He said, when that moment happens, Greg, you're going to be very sad. But I want you to remember one thing. Listen to the wind. So I got back to Corfe in October 2001, and Haji Ali had passed away. And I was in Pakistan 3 months before and after 9/11, during the very tumultuous period. And so I walked up to his grave, and there he was in a very simple little grave, facing the west towards the sunset. And as I predicted, I was very sad. I thought, how can I go on? This man had become my mentor, my surrogate father. He told me to drink 3 cups of tea and sit out and be quiet, and all those other things. And then I remembered what he said. He said, listen to the wind. And so I listened to the wind. In the wind I heard the voices of the children in the school. And I realized his legacy and vision had come true through the education of his children. In the evening, Haji Ali, he loved to read. But he only read 2 books. He read the Holy Quran and Persian poetry. And he'd hold the book up close to his eyes. But I noticed he often seemed quite sad, or he'd have a tear in his eye. So one day I asked Haji, why are you sad when you read? He said, Greg, actually I don't know how to read, and I memorize these books. And he showed me how he had flipped every 4th page and put twigs and paper in there. He said, it's my life's greatest sadness that I never learned how to read and write. It's my life's greatest hope that my children and my grandchildren can learn to read and write. And then in his exact words, he said, these words in these books make the stories that make wise the fools. And by fools, he meant illiteracy and ignorance. This man, in his 85 years, he only left his village once in his entire life. He didn't have a radio, he didn't have a phone, he didn't have mail, he didn't have email, or he didn't have Twittering, no nothing. He knew that through education was a hope and light for his people. So our work goes on today. We've had our best years last year and this year. Most of it is based on the relationships. And in the handout, we've written quite a bit about it. We've also had some success in some very interesting ways. One of our goals was to put a girls' high school in Uruzgan province. It's a very volatile area in southern Afghanistan. That school doesn't have, that province doesn't have one single girls' high school. And our goal is in 20 years to get a girls' high school there. This is the home of Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban. Well, this summer, 1 year later, we got a call from the Shura. These are the elders in Warwick province. And they asked to come and visit one of our schools. And I said, sure, come on down. And so they came to our school in Charsiab. And these men are the elders. They're pretty fierce men. Again, that's me. They're the third from the right, the no beard and very pale, scared, frightened face. And they got to our school in Charsiab. When I got there, they saw the giant playground, so they put down their weapons, and for an hour and a half, they went and played on the swings and slide and had a glorious time. And then, when they got done, I said, okay, now let's get serious. Let's go visit the headmaster and look at the curriculum. They said, no, we're totally satisfied. We want a girls' high school in Uruzgan province, but you have to come and visit us. So I went to visit them in September this year. We had a giant jirga, which is like a tribal meeting. They said, we're ready to donate free land, free labor. We want a girls' high school, but you need absolutely to put in a giant playground. So they started construction 2 months ago, and of course the playground's getting built first, and my main concern is they're going to use the playground, not let the girls go on it. But very seriously, these men, as a child, I've talked to them a lot, they never had the chance to play. It was actually my daughter Amira 4 years ago. I came back from the earthquake in Pakistan. I was actually pretty depressed. I'd seen tremendous devastation and suffering and human tragedy. And Amira asked me, why I'm so sad. I said, Amira, it's just really hard to describe what I've just seen the last few months. And she said, Daddy, do those kids have anything to play with? I said, no. And, that's kind of an odd question. Those people are mourning, they're suffering. And she persisted, and she said, Greg, or Daddy, you need to put a playground in their schools and get them something to play with. So Amira started a campaign with Jeff at Gold's Gym in Bozeman, Montana. They got 10,000 skipping ropes, which we bought and brought from the U.S., and we brought them to Azad Kashmir in the earthquake area. And the next spring, it was just incredible. We also got other things, but the community started lighting up because the children started playing and the adults started being happy. And it's very interesting that just simply play brought so much joy to these communities that had been through such tragedy. So when I was visiting a girls' elementary school in East Houston, Texas, 3 years ago, these poor fourth graders are trying to read the adult book. Did you read the adult book? Did you read a children's book? Okay, we'll make sure you get one. Anyways, I called my wife Tara, and she said, you're going to have to write a children's book. So I did that. I also have a pile of about 2,000 criticisms and complaints about 3 Cups of Tea at home. So I went through them very carefully. And in this book, In Stones into Schools, we have a timeline, a glossary, who's who, more charts, more diagrams, more photos, more maps. And thank you for your advice. And we have 20 pages by my daughter Amira. And one of the questions asked of Amira, so how does it feel the day your dad leaves to go overseas for several months? What's it like? So Amira says, well, we wake up, we're kind of sad, then we take Daddy to the airport, we give him a hug, we cry a bit but not a ton, and then as the day goes on we get happier because we know when we get home, Daddy will be there because he missed his flight. And that's a true story. And on a little more serious note, many of you asked me to comment a little about deployment of 30,000 troops to Afghanistan. I have some mixed feelings about it. One of my main concerns is that there were 9 meetings in Capitol Hill between President Obama and some political leaders and our generals and admirals to decide about the deployment of troops to Afghanistan. But my concern is that these meetings were held in secrecy. They were held in privacy behind closed doors. There was no testimony on Capitol Hill. The media wasn't involved. And I really think, war is the ultimate decision a country has to make. It's a moral decision. It's an ethical decision. It's also a very big financial responsibility. And I really think that if we're going to determine whether we go to war or not, we need to have testimony on Capitol Hill. We need to open it up to the public and the media, and it's something that the people need to know.